to today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So I just want to confirm, does everybody hear me okay? If you could also just say yes in the chat window to confirm that it's okay. And if so, we'll get started. So thank you very much for the introduction, Andrea, and thank you everyone for attending this morning. Before we begin, I wanted to take a moment just to review the agenda for what we're going to cover today. So I wanted to first start with a little bit of an introduction. We're going to discuss the concept of web design and what this means today in today's world. And then we're actually going to get into the meat of our content with our 20 tips. For the tips, what I've done is I've divided the tips into the actual steps that I would recommend you take when you start a web design project. So in any project, I would recommend that you first start with assessing your needs. What are the needs for this project? Then you actually have to plan your project and plan ahead of time, obviously. And then we have some tips for the execution and the testing of the web redesign as it's going along. And finally, once the new website is launched, things are not over. We also have tips on how to evaluate, measure, and improve your website on a continuous basis. Excuse me. I will end the presentation with just a little bit of information on INM, and then what we're going to do is look at some recommended next steps of where we can go from here. So let's get started. So I've worked obviously with a lot of clients on web redesign projects, and one of the things I wanted to share with you is that I've noticed a lot of common themes when it came to the main concerns that my client had when they were dealing with the websites they were living with today. I found that some of the main challenges they were faced with were that their website did not reflect their brand or their image. Their websites were difficult to manage. They were difficult to update or maintain. And one of the big things was that their website, they just didn't feel that they could provide the level of engagement and interaction with their members or their customers as they would have liked to. Another big factor is the fact that they had no idea in terms of metrics. Their website was not providing any feedback or showing any key metrics. Now, a few years ago, trying to improve these points would have been really challenging. And in fact, we were never really sure if we could ultimately succeed in what we were trying to do. Back then, a web redesign project was often a massive project. It took many, many months and involved a six-figure budget very often. The good news is, today, tackling a web redesign project is definitely not what it used to be. We have open source technologies, we have proven project management methodologies, proven methodologies for design and development, and if you have a good partner to guide you through the process, a complete site overhaul can be done in a matter of weeks at a quarter of the price and with measurable results. So let's start looking at our tips. The first major step in any web redesign project should always be to assess your needs. Why? Well, the goal here is basically so that you don't want to leave it up to impressions that a group of people have as to why you need a web redesign project. You actually want facts. So my first tip for you today would be to define measurable objectives. Obviously, the keyword here is measurable. The process of identifying your objectives starts with asking yourself, why are you revamping your site? So try to answer the question, my site revamp will be successful if I can, and then think of answers to this question in terms of measurable results. So examples could be, my site revamp will be a success if I can attract more visitors, or if I can create a better level of engagement with my visitors and members, or if I can increase conversion between visitors and members. The reason it's important to have measurable objectives is so that you can then define specific metrics that will demonstrate if these objectives are successful. So if your goal was to attract more visitors, you definitely want to set up a report to measure your new site's total number of unique visitors. If your goal was to create a better level of engagement, this would be measured by watching the length of each visit or the frequency of return visitors. To increase conversion between visitors and members, you would need to set up and measure the ratio of visitor to lead and lead to customer. Moving on to the second tip. So another part of assessing your needs would be to analyze what is working today. So look at certain metrics, such as what are your most popular pages or content? What are the most active entry points of your site? Remember, this is not always your homepage. What are common navigation paths throughout your site? And who are the top referral sites, and what URL, what page are they linking to? So this is the kind of info that you may think you already know, or you have a feeling about. But specifically analyzing this might actually highlight some content you didn't realize was popular. At this point, some of you may be wondering, well, it's too late now, I'm going to start my redesign project, and anyway, my site doesn't have a way to collect this information. How can I validate this so late in the game? So I wanted to quickly give you a couple of tips on how you can still do this at a later stage, even if you only have a few weeks before you begin your redesign. One of the tips is to search yourself or search your company name in Google and see what comes up. Obviously, your homepage is going to be up there in the site results. But what is very interesting is to see what are the next popular pages that show up in the search results. I'll give you an example. When you search Integration New Media, our company, in Google, what happens is that it will highlight the fact that our clients page is the second most popular page of our website. Another popular page is our resources. And the third most popular page is the information page on our Reach eLibrary product. So that is very interesting information in terms of what people are looking for in terms of information about our company. Another tip is if you have an assessment and planning period that is, I would say, longer than a couple of weeks, install Google Analytics on your current website and capture a few weeks of results to see the trends and to get some concrete data on what is working and what is not. This is very easy to do. Google Analytics is very easy to add. You just add a snippet of code on each of your pages. And if you don't have the control of your website right now, you could ask your technology department to do this. It is really easy. And so why am I spending time on this? Why am I recommending this? Really, I'm trying to show you that it's important to ensure that you're protecting what works today so that you can build on this in the future and not have to start from scratch. Excuse me. Tip 3. I would say that tip 3, which is very important, is to ask your audience. So you need to poll your audience or create a focus group with representatives from the different stakeholders in your website. It's important to ask the right people the right questions. Too often, web redesigns are just the decisions of a group of 2 to 3 people who sit together in a room and decide everything in a vacuum, making assumptions for the needs of other stakeholders. This should not be the case if you want to have a successful web redesign. A web team should contain representatives from different departments and functions. You could have administrators, marketers, executives, some customers and members, your partners, some of your IT contacts. So this type of cross-functional team provides a total view of your site. Consider each group and ask them, how do they use this site? What are they trying to do with it? What issues do they see? And what do they wish they could do with it that they right now cannot do? The next stage of any project involves planning. This is often the most time-consuming part and is obviously the most critical part to the success of your project. Armed with the information that you collected previously in the assessment section, this step should be less daunting. And now I'm going to give you some tips to make the planning process even simpler. The first stage of your planning should involve picking the right help. It is important to do this now at this step, since your partner will need to be involved in every next stage of planning. If you're working with a development partner, there's a few things I would draw your attention to. So make sure that your partner has the right concerns. This means that in many cases you'll see that firms that concentrate on just the web development side of things, they come at the project with a very technology-driven angle, rather than concentrating on your business metrics. So I believe it's important for you to choose a partner that understands your business objectives first and works with you to deliver the solutions that address these needs. And in addition, if you are equipped with the requirements from your stakeholders that you gathered at the assessment step, this helps to make sure everyone stays on the right track. Now, ensure that your partner has the right methodology. The way two organizations work together is very different. Also, the project management methodology used can dictate the success or the failure of the project. So look for a partner that has defined and proven methodologies for the specific type of project you're doing right now, which in this case is a web redesign. Make sure your partner has the right expertise. This may seem obvious, but be careful when you're working with a solo consultant, for example, as this may limit the technology choices down to what he or she knows. So be sure you choose a partner that can work with you to select the best platform for your needs. Don't let your partner's narrow expertise limit your technology decisions. And finally, one of the things to consider too is the size of your partner's enterprise. Look for an organization that has the right mix of expertise. Working with a team that has dedicated roles and resources means that you have access to specialists in each area. So the right size team for a web redesign project, for example, should include resources for project management, design, user experience, development or integration, testing, and marketing and communications. Tip 5 involves creating user personas. So user personas are extremely helpful to keep the needs of your site's future users front and center at all times. So what is a user persona and why do we use them? With user personas, we're basically creating a real person, and we make each real person a representative for your users. This puts a personal face on the user and helps all parties understand his or her perspective when designing, developing, or testing the website. As you can see in your screenshots there, you see that each user persona is given a name, a photo, a title, an age, his gender, and a description of their attitude and their personality. Ideally, you would have one persona for each category of user on your website. But at the same time, we recommend that you create a maximum of 5 user personas, choosing the stakeholders that are given the biggest priority for your project. Other things that a user persona should include is the user's technology profile, which covers what they use and how they use it, and obviously the critical tasks performed by this person on your website. And you use user personas all the time throughout your project. You use it when you decide on new functionalities, when you're prioritizing features, or even when you're testing your user interface and your user experience. And one point that's my recommendation to remember is that when you're creating user personas, the goal is not to try to encompass every single need of everyone in your users. You're not creating stereotypes of your users, you're creating real people. Tip 6 is think of your site in terms of stories. Think of it in terms of user stories rather than pages or functionalities on a website. This may seem challenging at the beginning, but it's definitely worth the effort. So what is a user story? A user story is a sentence expressing a specific client requirement. It is usually written in the format, as a, and here you would say your user type, I want to, and here you would express your requirement. So to help you to write your user stories, use your user personas that you just defined as the model for each story, and write individual stories focused on each of the possible needs. For example, if one of your user personas is a registered member of the website, then some of your stories will start with, as a registered member of the site, I want to. For example, as a registered member of the site, I want to be able to modify my online profile. The key here is to stop thinking in terms of, I want my site to do this, or I want this or that page on my website. But think of what your users need to accomplish while they are on your website. So once you've written your stories, I suggest you assign each user story a business value. How important is the story? Would it matter if it wasn't implemented? Does it concern one of your major stakeholders or user personas? What priority should it be given in the project? And you can actually put a number next to each of the story from 1 to 10, 10 being those with the highest business value, without which it wouldn't even be worth launching your website.